Today, I am here to talk about the 3 steps to turn your dysphoria into euphoria. So, this has been is a big freaking problem for a lot of people. I can see lots of people showing up. Hello, everybody. Some familiar names. So, as trans people, we are faced with a lot of challenges that most people don't even think about. And one of those is dysphoria. It's a huge one. And I actually did a survey a while ago where 120 people actually shared their experiences with dysphoria. And many of these descriptions actually described, a feeling of being trapped. And one person described it as, they're feeling like somebody has glued a skin tight costume to them with prosthetics on it that they can't take off, and they have to craft on top of it to feel like themselves again. And another person said that, they were really uncomfortable and concerned about how other people view them, as if they don't fit into the binary enough in order to be comfortable or to be, perceived as themselves. So one other person said, this is how I actually experienced it for the most part. One person described it as an overwhelming feeling of anxiety with intrusive thoughts, and like intrusive thoughts that won't go away about all different aspects of themselves. And, if you're watching this, odds are you have probably been feeling something similar. You've probably experienced this or are experiencing this. So I am going to share as much information as I can in this live to help you really confront your dysphoria a bit. And at the end of this, I know that some of you are probably going to want a little bit of extra support to really get on that highway to greater self-acceptance. So I promise that at the end of this, I'll take a few moments to share with you how you can do that. I was going to say, is that okay with everyone? But I can't see anyone's faces because we're live. That's okay. So yeah, type in the chat box, where are you coming in from? And for the people who end up watching the replay, just type #replay so I know that you're, watching the replay. Hopefully I can see all the comments properly on here. Let's see. The setup looks so nice. It seems pre-recorded. Oh, thank you. Got it set up on my computer for once. West Virginia, England. Ooh. So some very varied time zones already. It's probably quite late for you. Australia, yep. Beautiful. Okay. Sweden, beautiful. Ah, I love that you're here. Winter 2 meters away, literally. Winter's my partner. All right, beautiful. Got all different locations here. So just to introduce myself, my name is Jasmine Vine. I am the CEO of Divine Coaching, and I'm all about empowering people to heal and gain love for their authentic selves. That's what freaking lights me up. That's what I love to do. And in terms of my own experience with dysphoria, I tell this story of when I was younger. It was 2013. I was in the car on the way to school, and I just spent 2 hours working on my makeup. I had really, really tried to get my hair right so that it was covering my forehead. My forehead was a big source of dysphoria for me. I had like the contact lenses in because I wanted to make my eyes look bigger because I thought my eyes were masculine. I had all of this like stuff that I was always obsessing about. And this day, I couldn't get my fringe to stay where it was. I would always have it like from here all the way across with no gaps. And this day, for whatever reason, it would not stay there. And I had this big gap. And I was like, oh my goodness, because it was a gap going right up here. And I thought, wow, that's me done. Everyone's going to think I'm a man by looking at me. And it was really, really freaking distressing. And it was very much that intrusive thought sort of situation. It starts with that. It's like, oh my gosh, the forehead. And then it goes to everything else. Like, oh, my nose is too big. Oh my gosh, my lips are too thin. Oh my gosh, my chin is too square. And people are going to notice that, da, 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 da. And I was having a massive freaking panic attack that morning, and that wasn't an that wasn't an isolated incident. Like, that happened pretty often. Um, Thankfully, not in front of people most of the time, but this day it was. And I was basically just, my goodness, like a shell of a person for that day. Um, yeah, my forehead is my main source of dysphoria too. Yeah. Um, and I remember how freaking awful that feels. And it's not freaking nice. So being where I am now, to the point where, I don't really even think about my body whatsoever. It's not something that worries me. It's not something that I think about. And it's something that I've really reframed. All these things that I thought were wrong about me, I've really been able to look at them in a different sort of light and not be so crushed by them. So from that experience, from that journey, I've learned a lot of things that I would like to share and hopefully help your journey be a little bit, easier than mine was. So that is why we're here today. So if any of that sounds like you, and I've already seen some comments where you're like, yep, that's it's definitely sounds familiar. And if you want to gain, more self-love, more self-acceptance, more self-confidence, and if you're sick of waiting for everything outside of yourself to relieve your dysphoria, things like, HRT and surgeries and things like that, like, these things can absolutely help, but it's not something that a lot of us can do in the short term. I can't tell you the amount of messages I have from people saying, oh my goodness, I'm so dysphoric and I need to have this surgery, this surgery, this surgery, but that's going to cost me like 60 grand and I just can't do that. And so what happens is they think that it is not possible for them to feel happy or to feel okay in the now moment because they don't have those things. Now, if this is you, you're in the right place because we're going to go deep into this. So, specifically, what we're going to go into is how understanding the different types of dysphoria can help you really, breathe a bit of a sigh of relief now and feel more self love now. I'm putting a lot of emphasis on the word now because it is possible to do that now. The top 3 mistakes that trans people make when it comes to dysphoria, and a lot of people don't understand that a lot more of it is in control than they think. And also how to loosen the grip that dysphoria has on you, even before any surgeries or before any of the things. So let's get into it. So, number 1 is the different types of dysphoria. So there are 4 different types of dysphoria that I'm going to cover in this. This isn't an exhaustive list, but the first one is physical. Now, this is the one that most people are aware of. Oh my goodness, my body looks like this, or, and it doesn't align with how I see myself. That's the physical side. There's also the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual sides of it. So I'll go into each one of these a little bit deeper. So physical, that is like, some of that is inherent. Some of that is a sense that we have from a very young age that something just isn't right. And a lot of it can be driven by social things as well. We see other people doing things and we're encouraged not to do that. And so we end up feeling like, oh, how I look or how I am is wrong, or something like that. So the physical, we often look to, makeup, surgery, HRT, things like that to affect our physical body in order to relieve some of that. And that is certainly a part of it. But what a lot of people neglect is the next 3 that I'm going to go into. So the emotional portion of dysphoria. This can be negative emotions that are attached to your identity as a trans person. So a lot of us, we've had experiences when we were younger where we've been told, no, you can't, dress like that, or you can't act like that because you're not blah, blah, blah. And a lot of these experiences can actually cause us to hold a lot of negative emotions about ourselves. So this might be like anger at, maybe parents because they didn't let me dress how I wanted to. It might be shame on, different people, projecting their sort of beliefs and their opinions on you and making you feel like you are shameful, which no. But there can be a lot of things like that, like anger, shame, sadness, fear. Fear is an absolutely huge one when it comes to this, because when we have those negative experiences, our unconscious mind wants to protect us from things that are going to harm us in the future. And sometimes what it tries to protect us from is living our authentic selves, because it thinks, oh no, if you do that, like remember what happened when you were younger, where you felt that shame and that sadness and that fear and that hurt. And all of those things get brought up in the now moment to stop you from actually taking action on that. So that's really the emotional side of it. So, we want to flip that. Oh, sounds a lot like religious trauma to me. I've just seen. Yeah, absolutely. It can very much be a part of that. So, with the emotional, we very much want to flip that around. We want to resolve those negative emotions and find that acceptance for ourselves that maybe we weren't afforded when we were younger. And so we want to, increase our feeling of confidence. We want to feel more accepting of ourselves, right? Now, the mental side of it, this is really about our thoughts, our beliefs, our really all of the, deep in the head sort of things. So, what beliefs do you have around yourself? Now, this one really ties into the emotional, because when we have experiences when we're younger that, are giving us all these negative emotions about ourselves, we also form a belief around that. So we develop a bit of the mental side of dysphoria as well, which means that maybe we adopt a belief that trans equals bad, or I'm bad, or, no one's ever going to love me. Whatever it is, we often turn that into a belief and we store that away as well. And we access that at lightning speed to, stop us from experiencing harm in the future. So the mental side is really all of those beliefs. It's how do you see yourself? What is your internal sort of picture of yourself? And we really want to flip that around to, having a better view of ourselves, like we're strong and powerful. We want to find what beliefs are there and flip that around. If it's trans equals bad, then maybe the belief is I'm proud to be a trans person. Maybe you can have that feeling of pride in yourself, because it's not freaking easy. And as you know, we don't choose to be trans, and we have to put up with a lot of shit just from being born this way. So what beliefs do you have? How do you see yourself? How can you switch that around so that it is not affecting you in that negative way? And then finally is the spiritual side of it. Now, this is really about your purpose, like how you want to show up in the world, how you want to be perceived, like what is it that you want from life? And a question I always sort of think about when it comes to this is, have I answered the calling? Now, for a lot of people who, maybe are trans but haven't transitioned, the answer is 100% is going to be no. Like, no, I haven't. I've had this thing like nagging in my mind for God knows how long, and I haven't acted on it. So it is almost this, it has this effect of really knocking down our confidence and knocking down our belief in ourself and our own sort of view of ourselves in the world, if that makes sense. So when it comes to the physical, that's pretty straightforward. Most of us, we know what goes on with the physical sort of side of it. The other three, they are really ingrained in social dysphoria. So there is a lot of social aspects to dysphoria. The emotional, like the negative emotions, often that is because of experiences from our social environment. The mental, what beliefs we have about ourselves, same thing. If we're brought up in a religious household and our family says, oh no, you can't be trans, that's like, the devil's work, blah, 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 you're probably going to adopt, whether you like it or not, some sort of belief around that. And then the spiritual, it's really like, how do you relate to others in society? How do you want to be seen? What is your, your purpose? How do you want to show up? And all of those things are really social aspects of dysphoria. And these things, like the emotions, the beliefs, how you want to show up, how you see yourself, all of that, we can actually have an effect on that now. The physical, we can do bits and pieces. But like I said, sometimes, oh my goodness, I don't have 60 grand to go off and do this, that, and the other that I think I need in order to, feel okay with myself. So there are other things that you can do in order to experience that, self-love now, right? So that is that. And then there is like the top 3 mistakes that I see trans people making when it comes to dysphoria. So number 1 is it's using like the 4 things that I went through just before. It is people trying to go from the physical to the spiritual rather than the other way around. So a lot of us try to, do the things out there or, change the things about our appearance and in order to feel comfortable. But often, if we flip that around and we look at like, oh my goodness, what are the beliefs? What are the emotions? What is my purpose? How do I want to show up in the world? And then we focus on the physical, it actually relieves a lot of that desperation that we can feel in order to really make decisions because we want to and not because we feel that we need to. And then there's also like, the second one would be not accepting where you're at now and thinking that you need, XYZ in order to find happiness. So when I've spoken about dysphoria and, relieving a bit of dysphoria now, it's been a little bit of a controversial topic because people seem to think that I'm saying, oh my goodness, you can just cure your dysphoria and then you won't have it. And then voila, you're not trans. No, 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 no. That's not how that works. So what I mean when I say, accepting where you're at now is being okay with where you're at now, knowing that you deserve love, that you deserve acceptance, that you deserve to be happy now, and still striving to where you want to be, because there are going to be things that we want to do like within our transition to feel better about ourselves. Absolutely. And accepting where you're at now doesn't mean that you lose the drive to do that. No. So you can either approach transition from a place of dysphoria or euphoria. It's like, I am doing these things because I want to get away from feeling this, this, and this. I want to get away from feeling hatred towards myself, from feeling worthless, from feeling like an outcast, whatever it is. It's like, oh, I don't want that. And that's why I'm going over here. Whereas accepting where you're at now and doing the things because you want to do them is like saying, oh, like, okay, I'm cool with where I'm at right now. Maybe it's a shitty situation. Maybe it's not the most comfortable, but I'm doing what I can to live with it for now. And I want to get over here because that will make me feel more euphoric. That will give me, that will fulfill me more. So that is a big thing that I see people doing is they don't accept where they're at now. And conflict 101, when you're here and you want to be here and there's no easy route to get there, you're going to feel freaking horrible. That's just is what it is. So when you can accept where you're at and you can reduce those feelings and still strive to where you want to be, but know that maybe it's not going to be like an instant thing. Maybe it's going to be a little bit of a challenge or a bit of a, windy road to get there. You release a lot of that desperation and instead bring in a lot more inspiration. So that ties in with, number 3, which is thinking you need a bunch of surgeries in order to be happy or to not feel dysphoria. So, oh my goodness, I had a list of surgeries, the bloody length of my arm when I was younger. I was like, oh my gosh, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. Otherwise, there is no way that I can be happy. There's no way that I won't feel dysphoric. And it simply wasn't true. And once I worked on those more internal things, like the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, I worked on those. Okay, I think I'm back. I just got kicked off of the platform for whatever reason, so whoopsie daisies. What was I saying? Oh my goodness. I feel like I was in such a role with it. um yes, I was talking about seeing how thinking that you need all these surgeries in order to relieve that dysphoria. And that might be the case. That might be true for you on some level. But if you work on those other things, you can relieve a whole chunk of it before that sort of gets to it. Oh, I want to throw in another one here just quickly as well. Thinking that dysphoria is a necessary part of being trans. There's been so many people that have sort of said, oh no, I don't want to get rid of the dysphoria because I need that in order to be valid as a trans person. Absolutely do not. Um, Dysphoria is not necessary in order to be valid as a trans person. So I just want to make that very clear. So, the third point that I wanted to go over tonight was how to loosen the grip that dysphoria has on you, even before any surgeries, before any of the physical things. So, there are four things here. One is to release dysphoria from the past. So, we often hold on to significant moments in our lives where dysphoria is integrated and it kickstarts a feeling of shame in ourselves, or all those other emotions that I was talking about before, the fear, the sadness, anger, all of that. So releasing that from the past can actually help us feel a bit more peace in the present moment. And then number two is understand what goes on behind the scenes. So subconsciously, when you're experiencing dysphoria, and once you understand that, you can actually change it around a little bit. So a perfect example of this is I worked with somebody a little while ago on their dysphoria, and as many of us watching this probably have, they had pretty bad bottom dysphoria. And whenever they're oh my gosh, I hope I don't get kicked off of live for it, but whenever their body was aroused, they would experience a lot of dysphoria about that. They would immediately go, oh no, like that's what they would say to themselves. They'd be like, oh shit, oh, I am wrong, that shouldn't happen, whatever it is. And there was a lot of horrible sort of feelings that came up for them with that. And so understanding what goes on behind the scenes is figuring out what is it that is happening. So we categorize our information by our senses. So what we see, hear, feel, touch, smell, all of those things. And we often have a miniature process that goes on in the background before we experience a certain thing. We have a certain thought that comes up that brings up a certain image, or that, reminds them of a certain emotion or things like that, which triggers that feeling of dysphoria. So what we actually did with this person was we found out what those were. Like, what is the thing that see, hear, feel, da da da, before you felt that? And we go into that quite deeply and go, okay, well, this, and then this. And then what is it that you can change about that process that is going on in order to stop it from having such a negative effect on you? So that's kind of like, I call it like scratching the CD. You're going, okay, what is this thing that is causing the pain? Let's make that skip a little bit. Let's scratch that part of the CD so that it skips and I don't feel that horrible feeling. So I'll leave it at that just because it's only alive. The third one is practicing radical self acceptance. So this can be a tricky one, but one way that you can do this is to, whatever physical thing that you feel dysphoria about, you can ask yourself, like, what is the purpose or intention of that body part? And is it serving its function? So sometimes we get so caught up in the, oh my goodness, my nose has like this bump in it. I used to be so dysphoric about this bump in my nose, thanks to my dad's genetics, because I thought it was the most masculine thing in the world and I hated it. And I got to a point where I was asking myself, like, okay, what is the purpose or intention for my nose? Is it doing that? Okay, I can smell things. Yeah, it smells pretty fine. It does its job. And I'm appreciative of that. I am thankful that it does that for me because I love the smell of this and I love the smell of, fresh baked cookies. Ooh. Um, Whatever it is, you can usually find something that is able to balance that out a little bit for you. You go, is it serving its function? Yeah, it's doing its best. It's trying. Okay. So that is one way that you can start to get a little bit more self acceptance. And also, number 4 is really forgiving and letting go of the people who amplify your dysphoria in any way so that you can really lessen the effects that their judgments have and find more self acceptance. So that's not just, forgiving other people, that's forgiving yourself as well. And it can be tricky to do that sometimes. But when you do that, there's a lot of peace and comfort comes from that. So I better wrap up before I get kicked off of here again. Goodness me. So we've covered a lot. Like it feels like a very short amount of time, but we have covered a lot of things. The main things to really take away from this is there are different types of dysphoria. Not all of it is physical, and all the other types, you can actually do something to feel some relief now. That is a huge one that I really want you to take away from this. And also, going on the accepting where you're at now and striving to where you want to be, understanding that accepting yourself where you're at doesn't mean you're not going to have a drive to go to where you want to be. It just means that you can do it from a place of inspiration and euphoria rather than desperation and dysphoria. Whole different world. So imagine if you could feel calm with where you're at right now and move towards where you want to go with inspiration. Imagine how that might feel instead of being like, oh my goodness, there's all these things that I hate and I want to get away from that. It's almost the difference between like running towards the carrot or running away from the lion. So, how would that feel? And like, imagine if when you thought of your appearance, you saw yourself in the mirror for like your first thought was, I love you, or I love myself, instead of, oh my God, like holding all this self-hatred. Like, how would that make a difference to you? Or like if you accepted yourself so much that people's judgments just don't have the sting that they used to. That's one thing that I freaking love about the journey that I've been on, is that people's judgments used to floor me, used to be like awful. And now I'm like, cool. You think I'm a man? Okay. Doesn't affect me. So like, what would be different for you if you could sort of reach that? What would you do differently? Could you be more comfortable with yourself? Could you be more comfortable sort of looking in the mirror with, dating, with, I don't know, going for a job that maybe you didn't have the confidence to before? What would it do for you? And I actually want you to pop something in the comments or something in the chat. Like, what would you do differently, or how would things be different for you if that were the case? I'd love to see some ideas. I hope I'm seeing all of the chat. Oh. Thank you for this. It was a nice pick me up. You're very welcome, Harmony. So, what would be different for you if you could be calm with where you're at now and move forward with inspiration and acceptance for yourself? How would that feel? Be able to express myself more. Yeah. Beautiful. Pretty good thing to be able to express yourself more, right? Yeah. I'd do a stereotypically gendered role that I'd like to do. Yeah. Hell yeah. You'd be able to step into those things without feeling that freaking, the dreaded like imposter syndrome that so many of us feel from this. Misgendered recently and looked in the mirror and only saw a woman. Hell yes, Valkyrie. Love that. So there's some really positive things here, but harsh reality is for a lot of us, we're probably not there yet. probably still struggling like I was. And when you have information, when you have like, oh yeah, cool, there are other, forms of dysphoria, da da da, that can absolutely be helpful. But without implementation, nothing really changes. And so a really great example of this from my past was like, I used to, after like 11 years of therapy, I still was in a really bad place. And I remember really stressing out and thinking, like, oh my goodness, like I'm feeling really bad about this thing. I thought that, what's the words I'm looking for? I thought that just knowing where it had come from, like, oh, yes, I feel really bad because my partner said this thing and it's made me feel like this. It was very much like they made me feel this. But then I was really switching it up and looking at myself and going, okay, where does that come from? Well, shit, it's probably from when my mum said this when I was like 13 or, whatever. Because I had really dove into the inner workings, I guess, or the things going on behind the scenes, that I was able to sort of find those things, but I wasn't able to do anything about them. I was like, okay, great. I've got the information, but why do I still feel like shit? That was, oh my goodness, freaking torture for me for the longest time. And what I realized was without actually understanding how to process those things, then I'm kind of just going to be sitting in the shit, right? Like, it's not really going to change. So, yeah, I mean, we need to implement some of these things in order to actually create meaningful change. So that's why, in the beginning of this live, I promised that I would, take some time to help people who want to not just learn something, but to actually make some big changes. So I'd like to introduce you to Dysphoria Destroyer, which is a 4-week program that I'm delivering to help loosen the grip that dysphoria has on you now, so that you can get a bit more self-love, you can get a bit more self-acceptance and self-confidence, and make peace with where you're at and strive for where you want to be from that place of inspiration and euphoria rather than desperation and dysphoria. That is the purpose, of this program, and to not wait to start your life. Because I did that for so long. I was like, I need this, this, and this, and it's going to take this amount of time. Therefore, I can't start my life until then. And it's just not true. So 16 spots have actually already been snapped up for this offer. There's 14 spots left. And what you'll achieve in this is really, less self-hatred, more self-love, greater confidence and self-acceptance for the freaking wonderful trans person that you are. And people's judgments will have less of an effect on you. That's a huge one for me, especially when it comes to social dysphoria. People's judgments can often, like, we internalize them and make them things about ourselves. And we can actually reduce that quite a bit. So, this is for you if you're tired of waiting to start your life, waiting for HRT, waiting for surgery, waiting for the name change, waiting for whatever it is to get some relief from this freaking horrible gut-wrenching feeling. And you want to stop being driven by that fear and hate, making, those decisions out of desperation because the freaking lion's running behind you, and have more calm and self-confidence so that you can instead make decisions based on inspiration. It's like, I want to go here because that's what I want to do for me, because that is how I'm going to feel most comfortable. It's making the decision based on that, like for the right reasons, right? And also, if you want to love the skin that you're in and have more self-love and confidence so that anything that you do for your transition is because you want to and not because you feel you have to. That is a huge one for me. And, it might not be for you if you think that dysphoria is required to be trans. Like I covered that a little bit before. It is not required. If you think it is, then this program's absolutely not for you. If you're not willing to try a different approach and you think the only solution is surgery and you're like, nah, only solution is this, there's no way that anything else could help, then, sounds harsh, but have fun with that. If you want to actually look at a different way of doing that, then this would be for you. And especially like if you're offended at the idea that maybe some of your dysphoria could be internal, then absolutely not for you. So, what is this exactly? It is 4 group sessions, and this is valued at $600. There's one private one-on-one session with me, hour and a half, that's valued at $150. And there's a private Facebook group valued at $150. There's session recordings that you can keep and sort of look over as many times as you want at a $300 value. So the total value that I've looked at for this program, I really want to make it something that is really helpful for you. So the total value is over like $1,200 or something like that. And that is not what you'll pay, of course. The regular price for this program is actually $497, but for this week until the 9th, Wednesday the 9th, so basically this time next week, you can actually save up to $150 off with the code EARLYDD. So early bird, Dysphoria Destroyer, EARLYDD, that's the code. And the investment for this is actually just 4 payments of $97. This is Australian. Or for those who want a bit of extra savings and who are in the position to do so, then it can be 1 payment of $347. So what I want to do now is open up for a bit of a Q&A. Are there any questions that have come up throughout this live that you want answered? I better check out the chat. It seems like the Facebook one didn't work. That's a shame. Why didn't that work? I apologize. I've used this platform that lets me go live on multiple platforms, and maybe it wasn't talking to Facebook correctly. So, bugger. Sorry about that. What have we got here? Can't wait to be comfortable enough with myself to try dating again. Yeah. Dad's staying with me and starting estrogen tomorrow. Feeling really dysphoric with him here. My parents are dysphoric because they struggle to be on board with my trances. Yeah, so a lot of that can come from our others' perceptions of us. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any questions come through. So what I will do is, if you're interested, I'm going to post the link for you to, go out and check it out, to sign up if this is calling you. And yeah, I am really excited to take people on this journey. So again, it is the 4 group sessions, the private session with me to, dive a bit deeper into your, personal situation, and that private Facebook group and the session recordings. So that is all from me. However, there is one question that just popped up. Should we just do this ourselves, or would counseling help us do it? So that's what I'm talking about here. Like this, you can absolutely try to do it yourself. However, in my experience, it has been so much easier when there's somebody guiding you and helping you through this. So that's what this Dysphoria Destroy program is. And if you've got any more questions about it or anything, send me a DM at jasmine.viney on Instagram. You can Facebook, email me, whatever it is, and yeah, we can have a chat about it. But otherwise, thank you very much for showing up here, and I really hope that you got a lot of value out of this. And yeah, have a beautiful morning, night, evening, whatever time it is for you. And I will see you on the interwebs.